Congresswoman Demings, I went through that story about Harvard that Donald Trump was lying about today, just to point out that there are always surprises about what happens in this legislation. And one of the big surprises is how much the small business fund is being abused. What can the new legislation do to protect the small business fund to actually go to people in real small businesses? And what can it do to protect people's paychecks?
Well, Lawrence, thank you. It's good to be back with you. And look, when we passed CARES 1, we passed it with the primary goal being to protect America's workers, and particularly those small businesses that are the most vulnerable in our communities. Obviously, our $2.2 trillion package, the largest passed in American history, was not enough. We quickly realized that. And so we've got to regroup and make sure that we have processes in place and procedures that will make sure that the money that we will pass, hopefully tomorrow in the interim relief package, will go to those who need it the most, that those dollars are specifically designated for those small businesses who all over the country are struggling just to stay afloat. And so we have much work to do. Of course, this package is not perfect either. As you've already mentioned, it includes testing. And if we're ever going to get back to any degree of normalcy, we've got to make sure that we do, as the speaker said many weeks ago now, testing will allow us to get there. And then we need to take care of our hospital and those healthcare workers who you see are struggling every day to keep us safe, to keep us healthy. We need to look at hospital capacity and make sure that we're able to meet not only the needs of the epidemic or the pandemic now, but to be able to address any future needs. And so we still have some work to do, but we hopefully will pass this legislation either tomorrow or Thursday.
Congresswoman Demings, the Miami Herald is reporting that in your state of Florida, over 1.5 million people, at least, have applied for unemployment benefits, and only 40,000 have actually received any unemployment benefits. 40,000 sounds like what you would get in a normal month.
Lawrence, Florida taxpayers paid over $77 million for our current unemployment system. Under Governor Rick Scott, he was advised that there were some major problems with the system, that the system was difficult to navigate, that there were over 600 system errors, that there were problems with the system, and he did nothing about it. There's no evidence that he did anything to correct it. Last year, Governor DeSantis was informed of the problems by state auditors with the system. He did absolutely nothing. It appears there's no evidence that he did to correct the many numerous flaws and errors. And now here we are with the pandemic, as you've mentioned, that has caused over 1 million people to be unemployed who desperately need those benefits. They're being kicked out of the system. They cannot navigate it. Now, the governor has hired some call takers. But the problem that we are seeing in Florida deals with fundamental problems with the system that were never, ever addressed. And we find ourselves as basically the worst, at the bottom of the list in terms of how we deal and how we process unemployment benefits in our state. And we've got to do better.